And if both people, let's say it's you've been locked up, for months or years in situations like we just did with COVID, and frustrations about work, and the kids can't go, and all those stresses, and all that starts to go, you can get in those lousy states. And in those lousy states, people say things to their beloveds that they wouldn't even say to a stranger. Who here has ever said something to someone you love most that you would never say to a stranger? It was that mean, even though you're not a mean person. Who's done this here? Say I. So the state of your relationship is the state you bring to it. And you know what? You might want to jot down, there's only two forms of communication. Because, by the way, everybody's a great communicator when they're in a great state, right? Everybody, including me, is a lousy communicator if you're in a lousy state, right? That's where we screw things up. Our brain works differently. It's like the computer not have enough electricity. So there's two types of communications. There's a loving response and there's a cry for help, right? A loving response or a cry for help. But here's the problem. You all know what a loving response looks like, but a cry for help looks different than you expect. Sometimes your partner's cry for help looks like this. What's wrong with you? Why do you always do this? Why are you always late? Why don't you follow through all the time? That's really a cry for help, but it doesn't feel like it, right? But if you can realize their needs are not being met, they're freaking out inside, it may not even have to do with you. If I rub your arm like this, and I do it right now like this, you probably barely feel it. But if you've got a big wound right here, a gaping wound, I touch you with a cat hair, you're gonna jump out of your skin. Now, the goal is not to say you've got all these wounds, that's your problem, because we all have them in different places at different times, if we're honest. Some more than others, but we all have them. So the kind thing is to know that when somebody comes at you is to go, okay, I don't want to respond to a cry for help with my own cry for help. What are you talking about? You do that all the time. It's not me, it's you. Oh my God, now the state of the union is not good. Because what state are we bringing? Frustration, low energy, overwhelm, stress. So probably the greatest gift of a relationship is, you got a great relationship if in the beginning at least, and hopefully you maintain it through ever. If you don't, you can pick it back up. But a great relationship is someone you love so much, you want to be even better for them. You want to be a better person for them and yourself. That's how you know it's a great relationship versus what am I getting or not getting. See, when you start measuring in a relationship, the state of the union is going to be messed up. Because love is not about a measurement, is it? When you totally love somebody and you're out of your mind in love, what will you do for them? Put it in the chat, shout it out loud. What will you do for them, ladies and gentlemen? Come on, do it with your body, show me. What will you do for them? Anything. True? Is it true? You do anything when you're totally in love. But what happens is when the chemistry dies down and then you get frustrations and you stack frustrations in your own life and with your partner, then sometimes you change the identity of your partner or the story of your relationship to they're selfish, they don't care, it's all about them, they just want control, they don't even know I'm here. And once you tell those stories, there's an old phrase, tell a lie big enough, loud enough, and long enough, sooner or later people believe it. You know who taught that? Adolf Hitler. And most of us are Hitler to ourselves and to our relationship. We tell ourselves a lie about our partner because of our frustration, and it changes the state of the relationship. Think about this. When you first were attracted to someone in your life, when you really felt that early stage of it, what were you willing to do for them? Anything. What lit you up? Making them happy made you happy. Who can relate to this? Make some noise if that's true for you so I know I'm getting through to you, right? But sometimes after people are around each other enough, there's something that interferes. And jot it down. It's called the law of familiarity. The law of familiarity is a law of how human brains work. And here's what the law says. If you're around anything enough, or anyone enough, if you're on anything enough, you tend to take it just a little bit for granted. That's the tendency if you don't consciously overwhelm it. Just like the tendency is to look at what's wrong in the world. We have a negative bias in our brain because it's a survival instinct. Oh my God, what could hurt me? I want to be able to fight it or run from it, right? Or I need to freeze and hope it doesn't notice me. Saber-toothed tiger. Well, that pattern is there. It's like you don't have to plant weeds. Weeds grow automatically. So what you got to think about here is, okay, if I want a great relationship, in the beginning I was willing to do anything, I brought something to it because you're recording, right? How many of you in the beginning marketed yourself to your partner? You marketed yourself. You found ways to make yourself come across the best way you could, right? And then some people get in a relationship and they forget, just like in business, it's all about innovation and marketing. If you don't innovate for your customer and find better ways to meet their needs, satisfied customers even go away. Raving fans stay, right? And if you don't market and make people want to do business with you, then there's a breakdown here. So in the beginning, the State of the Union is great because you brought a great state. How many of you in the beginning of the relationship brought joy or playfulness or love or sensuality? How many say those are things you brought? Make some noise if that's true. But then gradually, somehow we get comfortable and that law of familiarity comes out. I'll give you a way that's not relationship-based. Maybe it'll help you. How many of you ever had, at one stage of your life, let's say you're a young kid or even a young adult, and there was like a car you wanted, or maybe a special car that meant to you like a level of progress or achievement? You know, you want to have this certain car. Who can relate to that metaphor at some stage in your life, right? And you get this brand new car, and it's a car that you dreamed about, and you're driving the car. Remember the new car smell? Maybe you're driving by, maybe you see yourself in that car in the bank mirrored windows as you're driving by, right? But what happens if right after you have that brand new car, you come out of the office building and there by the edge of your car, there's a scratch. Somebody scratched your car. Please do me a favor. Make the sound of what you feel when your brand new car has that scratch. When you first see it, make the sound. Show me with your face what happens. Come on. Now, after a while, you got to deal with it, and you got to go to the next meeting or go home. So, like, you try to, all right, get it fixed later on. But it really bugs you, doesn't it? Because it's your new car. And then what happens? About 2 weeks later, you come out of a shopping center or someplace, and there's another scratch. Make the sound of the second scratch. Make the sound. Show me with your face and your body. What's that scratch like? Come on. Oh, my God, I can't believe some idiot scratched my car. Didn't even leave a note. Now you're really stressed. So now you try to avoid that side of the car, right? You try not to look at it, right? And you come out, of a movie theater one night, you come back, and there's a dent. Ladies and gentlemen, show me with your face. What's the sound also if you got a dent now? Come on. On a new car. But after about 6 months, there's 4 or 5 scratches and a dent. And what do? You go, it's a car. Who knows what I'm talking about? You're now so familiar, it's a different reaction. And by the way, I wasn't talking about your car, I was talking about your relationship. That's also what happens there too, if you don't consciously change it. Because what starts happening, jot it down, what destroys relationship? Expectations. Expectations. Expecting people to be a certain way will lead to pain. Expectations yourself leads to pain. Now, we can't eliminate all expectations every moment, but if we're feeling upset, jot this down. Trade your expectations for appreciation, and your whole life will change in that moment. Trade your expectations for appreciation, and your whole life will change in that moment. So if you want to know what it takes, and by the way, when you're appreciating something, your partner, they feel connected, they feel appreciated, they feel respected, they feel admired, and that leads to love, and that leads to passion. But if they don't feel that, it's a different game. And in the beginning, you usually gave that. So think of it this way. Write this down if you would. 95% of success in a relationship is selection. I believe, in my experience, working with hundreds of thousands of couples and singles, more than hundreds of thousands, millions at this point, I can tell you beyond a shadow of a doubt, 95% of your success or failure in a relationship starts with selection. Now, so you go, well, thanks a lot. Where were you when I was selecting? I would like to have had this criteria. Right? But I'm not talking about that. See, you're missing it. I haven't told you what selection I'm talking about. It's not who you select to be in relationship with. That certainly plays a role. But even more is which part of you select to bring to that relationship on an ongoing basis. Do you bring the bastard, the bitch, the complainer? Do you bring the whiner? Do you bring the lover? Do you bring the playful one? Do you bring the sensual one? See, how many of you realize you got lots of parts inside? How many realize we're not one personality? We're lots of parts, right? How many have a part of you that gets pissed off or fearful easily at times? At times. Make some noise if you do that, right? How many have a part of you that can step up and crush the problem if you really get in state, right? How many have a part of you likes to play and be a kid and have fun? Let me see, there's some noise out there. So the question is, who are you bringing to this relationship? Not just who are you getting. Because see, the fastest way for me to change you, and if you ever watch me, like if you watch Tony Robbins, or, I'm Not Your Guru on Netflix, or you've ever seen the interventions that I do, or you'll see when you come to the seminar, is you'll notice that I change me. And that's what changes the other person. I change my approach. If I do the same thing every time, you know what it is, you're going to react the same way. But I always am changing, doing something different. That's why it's interesting. It's never the same. If you change, you and I are in what's called a cybernetic loop. If you're in a relationship with someone, a friendship, any kind of relationship, certainly an intimate relationship, you're in a cybernetic loop, which means what I do affects you, what you do affects me. So if I change what I'm doing, that will shift you as well. The fastest way to change you is change me. How many follow this? Say I. So if you decide that I want to have a great relationship, your mindset has to be, I am 100% responsible for the state of this relationship because I'm capable of changing my own state, my physiology, my focus, and my language. I'm capable of changing that for my partner. I'm capable of creating a compelling vision for our relationship. I'm capable as a human being to find the way, even if I don't know the way. How many of you can relate to what I just said is true, that there's a party that has those answers already? So the state of the union is the state you bring to it. So the question is, what are you bringing to it? The question is, what part of yourself are you bringing? In the beginning of your relationship, you tend to bring a different part than later on. In fact, I tell people something. If you think you're at the end of a relationship, are you going to behave the same way than if you think it's the beginning of a relationship? No way. True? So think about this. In the beginning of a relationship, you'll do anything. At the end of a relationship, you're preparing to protect yourself and end this thing, right? I tell people, if at the end of the relationship, right before the end, you do what you did in the beginning, there won't be an end because you're going back to what created it in the first place. If that makes sense, say yes. Say yes. So I want you to think of it this way. The state also shapes the next piece. There's two things that affect relationship most. We'll put up on the screen. The state you're in and the state you bring, and the meanings you create. Because meanings also affect state. Another way of saying it is emotion, right? Think of it this way. State is emotion. Anger, frustration, love, joy. Emotion comes from meaning. If I think you're disrespecting me versus I think you are challenging me versus I think you're coaching me versus I think you're loving me with your comments, meaning is going to change what I feel, my state. If that makes sense, say I. If you think your own within yourself, if you think there's a problem you have in your life right now and you think, well, the reason I have this problem is God is punishing me. That's the meaning you come up with. That's going to put you in a pretty lousy state. What if you think God is challenging you? What if you think this problem was a gift from God because it's going to make you grow? If that's the meaning, you're going to go in a different state. Or what if you realize it's not God at all? I've just been a lazy bastard in this situation, right? How many see how the meaning creates the emotion and the emotion affects the meaning? How many see this here, ladies and gentlemen? So the different parts of our brain or our being will create different meanings. And if you're an anthropologist, you'd say it's not men or women, it's not gender. The goal should be able to use the masculine and the feminine parts of ourselves. That whatever's needed, we can bring it up. Like if you want to be able to paint a beautiful canvas, you don't want one color. And some of us have favorite colors, more masculine, more feminine. But the ideal is to have both choices. How many buy that? If you buy that, say yes. Say yes. But we do need to know that if we're more associated or connected in moments, whether a man or a woman, to our feminine, there are going to be patterns of how we perceive things differently than if we're man or woman, doesn't matter, we're more connected in that moment to our masculine energies. Because they process differently in the brain and the biochemistry. And so our state affects the meanings, our meanings affects the state. And so one of the challenges with meanings is that we all have cultural conditioning, and then we have our own biochemistry that's different. Everyone has different cultural conditioning, different families, different backgrounds. Some were very religious, some not religious. Some with very strong standards of how you had to behave, some with total flexibility. Some people were micromanaged, some people were left to be free to themselves. And we come together in the beginning, there's all this chemistry, so it's easy, it's a great state. And then as we're around each other, we bump into each other's different meanings, and that's where a lot of stress can often come up. And again, it doesn't matter if it's gay, lesbian, heterosexual relationship, this shows up with just humans, right? Just human beings. And one reason is, write this down, because the human mind distorts, deletes, and generalizes. Write down those three words. My mind, the human mind, distorts, deletes, and generalizes life experience. What does that mean, distorts, deletes, and generalizes? Well, we don't experience life. Whatever happens, have you ever seen somebody go and play that telephone game where they whisper in somebody's ear and someone else whispers in the ear, and by the time you get to the end, it started out as a monkey had a banana, and now it's I got a diamond ring. You know, it's like completely, there's no relationship whatsoever. Who knows what I'm talking about? Who's ever played this game, right? Well, that gets magnified even more when there's something emotional and when you have different conditioning in your life. So the human brain doesn't remember everything. There's right now, there are literally millions of things you could become aware of, but your brain is mostly a deletion device, meaning your conscious mind can only handle so much input. There's the feeling right now of your skin against your clothing that you're probably not thinking about till I mention it. Or the feeling of your heartbeat, or the pulse even in your ear or your neck if you were to touch it, or the smell of your neighbor after all that jumping up and down, right? Or whatever it is, right? There's things you could think about from the past, the present. Your experience of life is not life. It's a few things you focus on. And there's only a few you can focus on at once. So our brains are always generalizing to make it easier. Like, okay, well, you always do this. No one always does anything. And when you say that, it's going to piss them off, but you're going to believe it because you've generalized, because that's what brains do. But you got to catch yourself. Just like saying, well, the law of familiarity is what does it. Well, if you settle for, like, it'd be natural to, if you had to go to the bathroom, just go to the bathroom, pull your pants down, and do it right here. And there are parts of the world where that's appropriate. But most of us have decided, in order to have a better quality of life, even though that's, quote, natural, it's not what we're going to do. We have a higher standard. I'm going to wait till I get to this little place called a restroom, right? But there are parts of the world where that's totally appropriate and accepted, aren't there? People driving through parts of India, people drop their pants and go to the bathroom right there. It's acceptable in some parts of India, isn't it? It's not funny, it's the truth. So, but we've learned to go beyond just what's natural in order to have a better quality of life. It's natural to be fearful, but if you let yourself be fearful because it's natural, your relationships are going to suffer. So let me explain. We distort. That's what the brain does. We delete. Let me give you an example. If you're really, really pissed off at somebody, remember I said this the other day, you ever gotten pissed off at somebody and you remember everything they've ever pissed you off with? How many know what I'm talking about here, right? Or the example I gave you is when you're really totally in love and there's nothing wrong with life, right? Because in order to be totally happy, you have to delete all the things that could piss you off. In order to be pissed off, you have to delete, not notice, all the things that would make you happy with this person. So if we can understand that all humans distort, delete, and generalize, then we can learn to question our generalizations instead of putting them on people. And that will change the meaning, and that'll change the state. So what I want you to understand is, think of it this way. If we take 100% responsibility for the state of the union, we can make anything work. We can make a relationship thrive. Now, some relationships will have a longer distance than others. Some people have more values in alignment. But jot this down if you would. What makes a relationship work is things in common. What makes a relationship work is things in common, especially values. What makes a relationship passionate is things that are different. But it's not different values, it's different energies. Like masculine and feminine energies is one example. Like, light and dark energies. If you're in sensuality, having both energies and be able to use them, move back and forth, makes people feel more alive. So here's what I'd like to do. We're going to take this general 30,000-foot view, and let's see if we can break it into some yard posts, some things that if you'll understand, if this happens, it's going to mess you up. And so I can tell you my experience dealing with literally hundreds of thousands of couples, probably millions at this stage. But better yet, let's use science. The most respected person in the area of scientific study of a relationship is Dr. Gottman and his wife. The Gottmans have been studying relationship, John and Julie Gottman, for 50 years. And they have this love lab, they called it. Literally, they've got I think it's 50,000, or I can't remember the number of hours of people that go and they live in a hotel and they videotape them around the clock. And they learned so much about human patterning, but they learned so much that today, John or Julie can listen to any couple for 15 minutes, and within 15 minutes, they have a 91% accuracy to tell you whether or not that couple is going to get divorced or not within 5.5 years, 5 to 6 years. 91% success ratio. Now, how can they do that? Well, it's because of some patterns. So rather than just reading what's on the screen, because they're putting some things ahead of time there, I'll come back to those. All I want you to get is, if you got 91% success in knowing someone's going to get divorced or not within 5.5 years, you must have learned something. And so the most important thing the Gottmans have learned is what they call the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. And I want to give these to you because if you notice these, you'll see where you violated them. I violated these at times. I'm sure you have too. But if you violate them on a regular basis, holy crap, you're in trouble. So what are those 4 horsemen? Well, the first one that will mess up your relationship is criticism. Criticism. And guys, if we can put that on the screen, that'd be helpful. So criticism. And nobody wants, that's not it, guys. it's the 4. You're going to all these other things, right? The first time we're showing this to everybody, so it goes there. So criticism, nobody wants to be criticized. There are tendencies that are different for male and female about what get criticized. Like women very often, feminine energy, not just women, can be shared in advice very often with other women without a reaction. Men in the area, maybe sports might be that way, or if someone pays someone to tell them, but men can take your advice as being critical. When I say men, I should say masculine energy, because it can be a woman who's in her masculine energy. But no one, just the universal, no one wants to be criticizing. And does that mean that you can never have a complaint? Of course not. Everybody has problems, frustrations in their life, and you got to be able to communicate them. But what we're going to show you today is how not to criticize, because criticism kills a relationship. Kills. It's the slow killer. And so how do you avoid that? Well, you got to know the difference between criticism and a complaint. And let's jot down what that difference is. When you're criticizing someone, you're not just telling what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, you're also telling them they did it to you. That's what makes it criticism. There's blame involved. A complaint can be, man, I'm feeling really frustrated right now because I'm not getting through to you, and that's my responsibility. I haven't been able to get through to you, honey. But I really want, I'm not upset with you. I'm frustrated, but it's not with you. That's a complaint within myself, but it's not a blame. And a person can hear that. Then they want to help. How many understand the difference between complaint and criticism here? Make some noise if you can do it. And human beings, in our nature, when something's really painful, there's 3 things we usually do. 1, we try to ignore it if we can, hoping it'll go away, but if you ignore a problem, it rarely goes away. 2, we tend to blame something. There's 3 things we can blame. We can blame events. 9/11 happened, that's why this occurred, right? This happened in my childhood, whatever. We can blame an event. Events are great to blame because events will never interrupt you and go, bullshit, you're lying. Lots of other people in 9/11, they're fine. So we love to blame events, right? Second thing we blame is other people. Your parents, who you brought up, the background, your friend, your lover, your husband, your wife. The third thing you can blame, of course, is yourself. And blaming yourself is not the same as taking responsibility, because when you blame yourself, you beat yourself up. What happens when you beat yourself up? Does your energy increase or decrease, my friends? Put it up. Increase like this or decrease? Which one? Come on, put it in the thumbs up. There we go. Yeah, it's down. And when your energy decreases, your connection to your partner decreases. The likelihood of negativity increases about tenfold. So you don't want to blame someone else. You don't want to blame yourself. You don't want to ignore it. You don't want to blame events. What you want to do instead is take responsibility for what you're feeling and figure a way to improve it. But if you want help, we're going to show you a technique to create help. So criticism, just right, kills. You got to get. People don't realize because it happens slowly. It kills a relationship, right? The feminine wants to be seen and appreciated. The masculine wants to be admired and respected and appreciated. We all want to be admired and respected. We all want to be seen because we all have masculine and feminine in us. What's the second horseman that will destroy a relationship that, by the way, when they see this pattern in a 15-minute conversation, they can see whether criticism's showing up or not. The one that's even bigger, throw out number 2 for everybody here, is when that person starts, put it up on the screen, please, number 2. This person starts to be in a place where they start to show contempt. Now, what is contempt? Contempt is when you're flat out act like you're superior, or you're sarcastic, or you're disrespectful, or you're cynical in your response to your partner, or body language, like where you're just like rolling the eyes, right? We all know that's going to piss somebody. Who's that somebody, you're telling them something and they're a person you really care about, and they start rolling their eyes and there's like a volcano going on inside you. Who knows what I'm talking about here? Raise your hand if you know that, right? And you know, a lot of us have gotten in the habit of this because we're not disciplined because of what we did in our youth. But these patterns you got by with in your youth, you cannot do in an intimate relationship and expect it to last. In fact, this is the number 1 factor that will guarantee divorce within 5 years on average when they look in 15 minutes. If a person shows contempt, so how do you get rid of criticism? You want to stack the positives. You want to focus on saying I instead of you did this, right? How do you not show contempt? Well, what's the solution to contempt? Put it across for everybody. It's really appreciation. Remember I said, instead of expectation, appreciation. If you can show your appreciation, if you can notice your partner's qualities. In fact, how many of you are currently in an intimate relationship? Raise your hand, and if you're on screen, if you're in the chat box, put a thumbs up if you're in an intimate relationship. Okay. How many of you currently are not in an intimate relationship? Thumbs down, not in it? Okay, great. So whether you're in an intimate relationship or not, I want you to think about your last relationship if you're not in one. Did you criticize? Now, a lot of people, no, I did not criticize. I coached, but if you coach someone, whether it was a man or woman, and they're masculine, I can promise you they overreacted to it. And you're like, why are they reacting this way? Because feminine energy is willing to give advice to each other, right? If you come to me and say, Tony, are you wearing another brown shirt today? Is that a brown shirt? If someone's in their masculine, whether it's a man or woman, they're going to go, yeah, and I'm going to wear a brown shirt for the rest of my life. You're not going to tell me what to wear. If you say to a feminine energy, oh, I don't know about that earrings or that lipstick. I don't know if that's right for you. You might not even like the woman or the feminine energy. And you might, oh, that person's a bitch. But the next time you go to put that lipstick on or wear that dress, you go, oh, should I wear this dress? How many know what I'm talking about? Ladies and gentlemen, if you know what I'm talking about, make some noise. So no one wants criticism. No one wants contempt. Those are universal. But also, anyone, man or woman, if you've had a lot of criticism of yourself, which most people do, when I was watching all your videos last 3 or 4 days, it took me back to my own life. Because so many of you are such good human beings and you're so hard on yourselves. It makes me emotional because I know what it feels like to beat myself up. And it doesn't lead to anything good, not in relationship, not in life, right? Excuse me. That's altering my whole physiology, even think about it. Bring me tears, sneezes, everything, right? But it's true. Excuse me. What happens is, yes, thank you very much. What happens is, if you beat yourself up, and so many of you do that, you're so hard on yourselves because you're expecting perfection. And I just want to remind you, perfection is the lowest standard on earth. How can I say that? Excuse me. Because we all know perfect's impossible, right? And there is no perfect. Once you get there, you'll think something else is perfect, right? So all perfect does is make you constantly say, well, I'm a perfectionist, so that means I'm really going for it. It's like virtue signaling. But the bad effect of it is it makes you beat yourself up because you're never going to be perfect. What we want to be is better than before. What we want to be is more outstanding. What we want to do is maximize who we are and we're capable of, but it's not perfection. What's the third of the 4 horsemen that will destroy a relationship? Defensiveness. What does that mean? Making excuses, playing the victim, not owning our mistakes. So it might look like this. Maybe your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, friend, intimate love says, hey, did you call Mary and let her know we had to cancel for tomorrow? And you didn't. The defensive response says, well, no, I haven't had time. You know I don't have time. Why didn't you call her? Like, reverse it and make it about the other person. As opposed to, oh, I screwed up, honey. I'm so sorry. I got so caught up. Shit, let me handle it. How many follow the difference here? Say I. And by the way, we're only defensive because we're usually beat ourselves up so much, or we feel so bad, or we're afraid we're going to get a negative reaction in the other person. But being defensive creates an even worse one. So the alternative is simple. It's what we've been talking about. Take responsibility. Accept your partner's perspective and say, listen, even if you don't agree with everything, you could say, look, I understand, I appreciate your perspective on that. I didn't see it the same way. I see you see it differently. I respect that. That's different. You don't have to agree with everything with a partner. By the way, what Gottman found is a lot of arguments are about things that you'll never resolve. So what you got to resolve is to agree to disagree on that situation, or come up with something in between that's a balance, because that's what it takes to make a relationship beautiful. And also that's what makes us grow. And then finally, the fourth one, and this one, by the way, is about 85% more male energy does this, according to Gottman's research. So this is not me making it up. It's called stonewalling. So what happens is the feminine often is like, well, what they say, what they want, what are they experiencing? Because the feminine energy, whether it's in a man or a woman, doesn't matter. Gay or straight, doesn't matter. Feminine energy wants to connect. Masculine sometimes wants to cut it off. It's like, score the touchdown and let go to nothingness. Let me do something where I'm not thinking. It's not a man thing, it's a masculine thing. And we all have that. Some more, some less. Whether you're man or woman doesn't matter. But stonewalling is when you just shut down. And so oftentimes the feminine's like wanting to connect, and the masculine energy will just shut down. And it's like withdraw or look away or be closed or actually even turn away. Or the person says something and you barely respond. Yeah, no. You're looking at your phone. This drives people insane. Now, of the four, criticism is the slow killer, contempt is the fast killer, and defensiveness and stonewalling are like the nails in the cross. How many of you can honestly say you've done all four of these at different times in a relationship, ladies and gentlemen? Make some noise here. And how many have felt partners that have been all four in your perception, at least, ladies and gentlemen out there, right? But we can't control our partners. We can shape our partners by behaving differently ourselves. That's the power of 100% responsibility. Now, by the way, that doesn't mean you got to stay in a relationship forever. Some people have different values that are so radically different. You learn from each other, and then this relationship's going to end, and you're going to find a new one. You're going to learn from it. Somehow we think everything's supposed to be perfect when we're still figuring things out. So I think these four I found to be priceless. And again, they're universal. It doesn't matter gender perception, doesn't matter sex, doesn't matter any of these things. These are human experiences. Now, some are more magnified in masculine energy, again, not man, energy, which can be in a gay or straight person, a man or a woman. Some are more magnified with more feminine energy, which again can be gay or straight. It can be any number of things, including men and women. All right? How many get value out of this here? Let me see a show of hands here. Let me give you a universal principle that will help you, that encompasses all this in like a 30,000 foot. The quality of your relationship is the sum total of the communications you've had with your partner. That's a lot of words. Let me clarify. Your relationship is really the result of what you've communicated ongoing. And let me simplify it. Gottman found something really interesting. And this is his number one principle of knowing whether you're going to get a divorce or not. They did this by watching videos. They did this by doing transcripts until they noticed a pattern. Because by the way, they did these studies for a minimum of 20 years on couples. So they saw them in the first 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 7 years. By the way, most relationships end in the first 7 years, and the second time period is 12 years. Now, some have after that, but those are the two biggest periods in which they occur. But here's the thing you got to know. If your communication to your partner is a ratio of positive, negative communications, where you have at least 5 times more positive than one, you'll have a stable relationship. Stable doesn't mean you're totally in love. It just means you guys are not going to get a divorce, right? That's stable. Ideally, it's at least 20 to 1. 20 to 1. I think, without exaggeration, my wife and I don't know, maybe I'm exaggerating, probably 1,000 to 1. The number of times a day I say, I love you, I'm so lucky to have you. We communicate this to each other on a regular basis, in our own heads to ourselves, as well as to each other. And that accumulation over decades develops a level of certainty of love and power and passion that's absolutely amazing. But if your ratio of positive communication to negative communication about your partner, like you're constantly criticizing him or coaching him, and that ratio is 3-to-1 even, or 2-to-1, or lots of relationships, it's 1 positive and 5 negatives, this is going to end up in an ended relationship. Certainly going to end up in divorce, but it's probably going to end up in a relationship that's not only divorce, but where there's a lot of negative emotion. And where does it come from? Criticism. Where does it come from? Defensiveness, stonewalling, right? Rolling your eyes. You know, those pieces are stacked in a relationship. So you want, ideally, 20-to-1. And you got to ask yourself, am I creating a 20-to-1 or more in my relationship? The goal should be 1,000-to-1 in my opinion, right? Can I communicate something in a way that isn't criticism where it's me, right? So, you know, honey, sometimes when you say this thing, if you see a reaction in me, or a little resistance, I realize it's there. It has nothing to do with you. It's my conditioning. It's like, you know, if somebody used to do that in my past and I'm reacting to that instead of you, and I really want to say I'm sorry. It's not you. I want you to know if you feel this, it's not you. That'll make your partner open to you. Instead of, why do you always do that? Because you know what happens for most people? Little stuff starts to build up, doesn't it? Little resistances, like, why does he always tell that story? Or why does she always do that? Or why are we always late? Or, man, why can't I make a decision? How many ladies out there cannot stand a man who can't make a decision? Make some noise, ladies. Come on, make some noise. And when he makes one, you tell him he's wrong, won't you, right? Right? So we have all these patterns that we all have inside of ourselves that are just ridiculous, right? That we just don't see because we're not an anthropologist. So your goal, 21 plus. How many think this would be valuable here? I'm curious. Let's do a quick little evaluation just for a second. Stonewalling, pulling apart, not reacting, just shutting down, not giving a response, turning away from your partner, turning to your phone instead of them, not turning towards them and giving them direct contact. Plus 10, minus 10. How many have areas where you clearly could improve? Raise your hand if you can see things you could clearly improve here, ladies and gentlemen. And by the way, what would you say, and this is a hard one, to be honest, you'd probably have to see a transcript of your conversations, but at a gut level, if a relationship ended, when it was ending, what was the ratio of positive to negative communication? By the way, no communication is negative communication. Stonewalling is negative communication. You don't have to be someone who says something harsh. Just withdrawal is negative communication. It's cutting somebody off. So when a relationship was ending, what would you say your ratio was of positive to negative communication? Was it 5-to-1, 1-to-5? Just out of curiosity. And when your relationship has been most positive, what would you say the number of positive messages versus negative messages would be? Again, that includes criticism. So what we're looking for, my friends, is to notice the gap of where we can be better. Now, how many see places you can absolutely be better? No question, you want to be better. Make some noise if that's true, you ladies and gentlemen. Crank your energy up again. Come on, lift the energy, lift it. Come on, make some noise. Make a sound of excitement like you're excited to use this to make everything better than it's ever been before.